welcome to Lotus Literature. If you know me from Instagram, you already know a little bit about me, but if you're new, my name is Amy and I study a Bachelor of Arts in English with a minor in Linguistics at the University of Southampton, and I'm going into my second year at the end of September / start of October. And today I wanted to share my August wrap-up and book buys with you, just to give you some recommendations, kind of talk about what I liked reading this month, some of the things that maybe I didn't enjoy as much as I thought I would, or they had a bit of hype around them on Bookstagram and maybe I didn't enjoy them. I'm going to start off with the book buys because some of what I actually read this month is in the buys, so I'll talk about them later. But I'll talk about what I've bought and not yet read, so it's on my to-be-read pile. And then I'll move on and talk about the 9 books that I read this month and what I thought about them, pretty much based on my own Goodreads reviews that I've already written, and you can check out which I will link below. I'll start off with the August book buys that I have not read yet and are still on my to-be-read pile. The first book that I received this month, I didn't actually buy it, but I won it in a flash giveaway on Instagram, and it is a really nice hardback copy of The Lost Boy by Dave Pelzer. I know that this isn't the first book that he's written. I think A Child Called It is the first one. I know in this book, the blurb, it's quite a short blurb, as you can see from the back, just a couple of lines, but it's about his teenage years. And I think the first book is about his childhood. I'm not sure what the third book's about because it is a trilogy. And I do know that his brother Richard, I think, also wrote a book from his own perspective. But I'm really looking forward to reading this. I know it's going to be quite a difficult read. It's quite short, actually. I think it's only like 200, 300 pages, somewhere around there, which for me is quite short, sort of in the middle short. But I'm actually really looking forward to reading this next month, hopefully. I think it's important to know that these things do go on, and these books are a great way to spread the message that you never know what's going on in someone's life. Someone could keep stuff hidden for so many years, and then to be able to write these kinds of books. I know it's probably very difficult to have to relive that in writing again, so I do have a lot of respect for Dave Pelzer in particular. I say I'm looking forward to it in the sense that, you know, I want to read it, but at the same time I'm really not looking forward to seeing just how horrible his childhood and his teenage years were. Another book which I did actually buy this month is Ash by James Herbert. This was from one of my local charity shops. I've got so many down here in Southampton. It's really good. I paid £1 for this because it's paperback. I did actually get a hardback on the same day, which I only paid £1.50 for, which is amazing considering hardbacks are probably 20 quid nowadays. But James Herbert is known as a chiller writer, which I'm assuming is like a chill, like a horror thriller. And personally, I love thrillers and horror novels, so I'm really, really looking forward to tackling this quite chunky book. It's 700 pages, so a decent size, and one that's probably going to take me maybe a week and a half to get through. I'm thinking of reading this around Halloween, like October time, just because it seems like that kind of atmosphere. And there's kind of incorporations of curses, dark magic, it seems like, the paranormal, and I've never really read a proper paranormal book. I've read Stephen King, but I've never read something that's like just ghosts and like parapsychology, paranormal, etc. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how Herbert's writing style sits with me, because I've not actually read one of his works before. But as I said, this was only £1 in my local charity shop, so if I don't like it, then it's not the end of the world, but I'm really hoping that I do. In the same kind of charity shop bunch that I bought, I actually found Anne Frank, The Diary of a Young Girl, in pretty much perfect condition. Like, you can see the edges aren't frayed, the pages haven't started yellowing. Like, this is pretty much a brand new book, and I found it in the charity shop, again, for £1. This is something that I've always wanted to read, but every time I go into a bookshop, I kind of forget that I want to read it and just don't look for it. But as soon as I saw it in the charity shop, I thought, I have to get this now. This, again, is such an important read in my eyes, historically, morally. I don't really know I know what to expect, but at the same time I don't. I know it's going to be really, really difficult to read, and you really need to go into this respectfully, because this is history. Obviously, I assume it's a translation. Yes, the translator, Susan Massety, I'm hoping I pronounced that correctly, So she should also be credited for this, because it must be a very difficult text to go through that porously, to kind of read through it over and over again after experience these traumatic events. And I don't quite know how it's going to end. That's what I'm wondering. Like, is it going to end with her being caught? Is it going to end just on like a normal day and you never find out what happened? Obviously, we know now what did happen to her. And I definitely think that this is something that everyone should read. And I really hope to read it soon, because it's just so important in my eyes to reflect on history. And books are a great way to do that, especially diaries. The third book from that specific charity shop bundle was Moby Dick. It's the Wordsworth Classics edition. Again, it's in really nice condition, like pretty much new. Moby Dick is a classic that I've not really heard loads about. Like, I've known it exists and I've kind of thought, oh, I might give that a try. But it's not until I saw it and saw how big it actually was that I thought, this is going to be a bit of a challenge. I have seen people on Bookstagram say that they didn't finish it, they got bored, but it just seems like quite a chunky book again, so I'll try my best with it. I've just seen that there's over 100 chapters, and I'm used to these kinds of classics only having like 30, 40 max chapters, but I, at the same time, feel like I'm going to get halfway through and just think, oh my god, this is so boring. But I will update you on my Bookstagram, which is the same at Lotus Literature, once I have finished reading it, and give you pretty in-depth thoughts, I hope. The fourth and final book that I got when I went to the charity shop was a hardback version of Philippa Gregory's The White Queen, and thankfully this is the first book in the series. Otherwise I'd be kind of annoyed, like I picked up the second or third book and I would have to go, knowing me, onto Amazon to find the first book. I haven't tried any like English historical fiction before. I believe this is set sort of like Renaissance-y time. It doesn't really say anywhere straight away. But the blurb on the back, obviously with hardback books, they don't often have like a proper blurb like a paperback book. This is just Good Omens that I also bought this month. Talk about that in a bit. It's got a proper blurb, just kind of tells you a little outline of the story, maybe like, oh, the classic million-copy bestseller, just a bit about its legacy, and a few quotes just from newspapers and reviewers. But with this, it's just the newspaper review quotes, and they're all really, really positive. Like, Philippa Gregory is truly the mistress of the historical novel. Someone else has called her the queen of the historical novel. So I'm really looking forward to reading this one. And because it's hardback, I actually prefer hardbacks, but they're so expensive that I hardly ever have the money to buy them because I'm a student and my loan doesn't come in until the end of September. But I also really love the cover on this. It's like the writing is raised. Don't know if you can hear that, probably look a bit of a twat doing that. But it's so like, I love the kind of delicate pattern around the portrait, and how it kind of continues into the inside cover blurb here, which has also got the price. So this was £19, I got it for £1.50 in the charity shop, and it's in pretty much perfect condition. The only thing is on the front, it's a little bit torn, but that doesn't affect like the reading of the book, so that's not a big deal to me. I'm just so happy that I managed to finally find some historical fiction at such a good price and in hardback, so I really, really want to start this one soon. I also have another hardback that I won this month. I won it in a little flash giveaway again, and it is Beth O'Leary's The Switch. This might seem like a bit different from all the other books I have. Like, they kind of seem like, ooh, horror, chiller, thriller, kind of mature books. But I know this is a very light-hearted book, and I've seen this all over Bookstagram for several months now. And it just seems really sweet, and I wanted to read it. So when I saw it up for grabs in a flash giveaway, had to enter, and I was absolutely shocked when I won, because about 70 or 80 people had entered, and my number, lucky 22, got picked, and I received this. As with most hardback books, the back blurb is a hell of a lot of good reviews, and the inside cover, I've got a little note where I won as well, it's really sweet. The inside cover is the actual blurb of the book, and this was £13 and I won it, so I saved myself £13. Once again, very shocked to receive that, very happy when I saw the little parcel come through the post box, and one that I think I will get through quite quickly. I seem to get through these kind of books, like thrillers as well, really quickly. So I reckon this will be like 1 to 3 days reading, but I'm very much looking forward to that. Another book that I bought this month, I actually bought yesterday when I met up with my first internet friend and my first bookstagram friend, the Bibliomaniac, Charlie. She's so lovely, she's so sweet, and I had a really nice afternoon. We went to Waterstones, had a little browse, had a little buy, and then we went to TGI Fridays. It was my first time there, and the food was amazing. I got their classic wings, which, going off on a bit of a tangent here, it's like a Jack Daniel's sauce, sort of marinade. And I don't really like Jack Daniel's, but that sauce was brilliant. Like, it was amazing. And then I had the Mario chips, I think they were called, which were chips with grated cheese, bacon, and like a marinara sauce, but it was pretty good. It was amazing. And one of the books I bought yesterday was Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman's Good Omens, and the reason I bought this is because I want to read it before I watch the show with my boyfriend. Good Omens, I really want to get through this and then start the series, because David Tennant's in it. Quite like David Tennant, especially from his Doctor Who days. And I've not actually read any Terry Pratchett or Neil Gaiman before. I think Neil Gaiman wrote Coraline, please correct me if I'm wrong there, but that's also something I want to read. And Terry Pratchett, I know he passed away a few years ago. And I think he's known also for the Discworld series, which I believe is about 40 plus around their books. Might read them when I'm a bit older, got a bit more money to invest in such a long series, if they're my kind of thing. But Good Omens, I love this cover, it's so funny, just jovial, like that guy's just chilling, he's having a good time. And it does say that it's a Prime series. This was the only one left of this cover. There was another black cover, but I thought it was a bit boring, but I like this, just like, kind of, it's simplistic, but it does the job. The blurb made me laugh, like, it just seems like such a silly, just jovial plot that I'm really, really looking forward to reading this, as with most things. I'm gonna say I'm really looking forward to reading things a lot, so you have to get used to that. I need a good laugh, so I'm really excited to read this and just see just how funny and great it is, and then hopefully move on to the series. The final book, kind of fiction book that I bought, I also bought yesterday, and it is this gorgeous, amazing edition of The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I have seen this on Instagram again a lot, mainly because it's such a thick book. Like, I think it's only about 800 pages, but it looks like 1,000 plus. And people say it's like a feminist Lord of the Rings, but I actually did just pick this up because I love fantasy, and the cover really intrigued me, like the blue shiny dragon around the tower. I just think it's such a pretty cover, like it's so well designed. It's simplistic, but at the same time, like the dragon really brings it to life for me because I like dragons in literature. I know Samantha Shannon's also written a trilogy, I believe, so if I like this, I might go ahead and see if I enjoy the trilogy too. Also, if you want to do a buddy read with me on any of the books that I've mentioned, please feel free to drop me a message on Instagram and I will get back to you ASAP. I don't know how long this video is going to be, but we are now only just on the second part, and if you've stuck around, then thank you so much, because I know I waffle a hell of a lot. We're going to move on now to the books that I managed to read in August. This is the August wrap-up part of the video, and we're going to start off with Dracula by Bram Stoker. I really, really enjoyed this. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. There were moments in it where I did feel like it was dragging a little bit, it was a bit tedious, but they quickly remedied themselves. And even though I read this at the start of the month, I still really, really vividly remember most of what happened. The ending was kind of sad for me. I really did feel like quite upset with what happened. Not kind of the resolution of the plot, but what happened to the characters. It did get me a little bit. I was quite upset, but I was very satisfied with reading this book. It's actually a lot like bigger than I remember it being while I was reading it. And this is one of the Penguin English Library editions, and I love these editions. They're all really unique with like the little drawings you get. The spines are quite simple, just the name, the author, and the kind of coloured binding blocks at the top and bottom. And the font size, if anyone's interested in that, pretty decent. Not too big, not too small. I think I got through this in a couple of days because I was reading a lot, even though it's nearly 500 pages, I think. But if you're looking for a good gothic horror classic and you're not really a fan of classics but you want to give them another try like myself, this is a really good place to start because it's easy to understand, the language isn't too eloquent, you can keep up with the plot really well, or at least that's what I found anyway. The characters were quite memorable, quite unique in their own rights. Overall, great book, great classic, and a great gothic horror novel. On the other hand, something that didn't hold up as well as I thought it would is Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway. This was the second book I read this month. It's very short, at just under 200 pages, as you can see, not too big, not like the Priory and the Orange Tree. But I really wasn't a massive fan of this. I was meant to read this for first year, for my novel module. My module was just literally called The Novel. But Mrs. Dalloway, I didn't get around to reading it because, as I said, mental health was all over the place. So I read it over the summer and I gave it, I think, a 3.5 out of 5 on Goodreads. I had to rate it a 3-star because you can't do halves on there. But I did quite a big review for this. It just goes on and on and on, like it goes off on so many tangents. I know that's Woolf's particular style, like her modernist style. But I was reading it. Sometimes I really enjoyed it. Sometimes I felt really engrossed with the characters. I was quite invested in the plot and what was going on. But at the same time, like, I read it and I read it and I read it and I just wanted it to end. Like, I got to the last few pages and I was like, right, come on, just get on with it. Like, for me, it's a plotless book. Nothing really happens. I know there are like elements of it with Septimus, I think he's called, Septimus Warren Smith, yeah. I enjoyed his aspect of the book, but I think Dalloway is kind of, Mrs. Dalloway is kind of the main force of the book. But I would have liked to see more of Septimus's side, kind of meeting Mrs. Dalloway's side, because the blurb kind of advertises it like, oh, their lives are more similar than they think, but I didn't really see that. I have been recommended to try A Room of One's Own. I might try that, but I've also heard it's quite similar to this in the sense that it's just tangent after tangent after tangent, and I can't handle that for more than about 10 pages. So this was quite a difficult read for me. Got through it. It was okay. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. I probably wouldn't read it again, so might give it away. I don't know, like, it's not for me, and I know it's not for everyone. A lot of people love Woolf. Unfortunately, I'm not one of those people, but you just got to be honest about it, and it's not for me. The third book that I read in August was Inheritance by Christopher Paolini. I hope I pronounced that correctly. This is actually Alex, my boyfriend's book, and this is the final part of the inheritance cycle, which starts with Aragon, moves on to Eldest, then Brisinga, and finally Inheritance. And I just want to say it's a hardback. I'm very happy. I love like the gold writing, the fact that there's like a unique dragon design to go with kind of the colour of the book, the like plot of the book. Like Aragon, it's got his dragon on the front, Eldest, I won't spoil it, but it's a dragon, very, very relevant. Brisinga, again, quite relevant, quite a sad book actually, Brisinga. But I finished the series at the start of this month and I really, really liked it. I wouldn't say it's my favourite fantasy series. David Eddings' Belgariad and Malorion, hopefully pronounced that right. They're my dad's books, I read them a couple of years ago, but I read the prequels, I read them all. That tops the list for me at brilliant fantasy writing. And I know Paolini's actually taken a lot of inspiration and advertised Eddings' books in sort of the back of his. But like, I think it was a good conclusion. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5. Like, I enjoyed reading it. It's something that I really kind of got into. Found myself reading hundreds of pages at a time. And the ending was actually really, really sad for me. Like, I didn't expect it at all. I thought, oh, he's just gonna get on with his life, like, sort everything out. And then, slight spoiler alert here, he just kind of goes away. Like, he just goes off on another adventure and you don't really know what happens to him after. I don't think there's an epilogue. No, it just says the end. There's no like, oh, Aragon did this afterwards and Roran did this afterwards. So I was a little bit annoyed, a little bit upset, a bit shocked, but overall, it's a really great conclusion to the inheritance cycle. And I know that a lot of people on Bookstagram found the whole cycle quite difficult to get into, because believe me, Eragon and Eldest drag a little bit, but about halfway through Eldest, it just kicks in, everything goes to shit, and it's great from there on out. So if you can get yourself through the first book, which is I think about 300-400 pages, and you can get through to the last 3, then you will really, really enjoy them as much as I did. The 4th book that I read in August was Louisa May Alcott's Little Women, and I believe this edition also had Good Wives in it. It was split into 2 parts. It's just part 1 and part 2, so I'm assuming this is like the kind of deluxe almost with both parts in. But this edition, I treated myself because I had a little bit of money left on a Waterstones card for Christmas, and I always wanted one of these like hardback penguin classics with the unique design on the front. They're almost alike to the kind of paperback ones. Obviously paperback, hardback, different spines, but I really like both editions, but I love hardback books, as I keep saying, so I had to get one of these. You get a page marker, a lovely little page marker at the bottom. The font is really old-fashioned, like, I don't know if that's going to focus well, but like, it's just really, really great, like, the edition. Unfortunately, where I've been holding it, it's kind of rubbed off a little bit here, but I guess that just shows the wear and tear of, like, how much I love this book. And I want to say this is now one of my favourite classics of all time. I loved reading just about their, like, lives. It's something that I'm quite interested in, because I'm quite a nosy person in general, so I liked just the little insights into their lives. At the start, for me, it felt like a lot of short stories, like little snippets that they've kind of tried to put together in one book. But as it goes on, you realise that it's showing like the important parts of their lives, where they meet people who have an influence, where they go to places that sort of impact their lives and their futures. And then I think it even goes on to talk about their own children, especially with Meg. And a certain part of this book, if you've read it, then it really upset me. Something happens and I was quite upset, let's just say that, because I thought, oh, it's all just going to sort itself out, and when it didn't, I kind of had to put the book down for a second and think, right, it's going to be like that, is it? But got to the end, thoroughly enjoyed it. I did actually see Waterstones yesterday that Alcott wrote books after Little Women and Good Wives about Joe's children, I think. I didn't know they existed until I saw them yesterday. I just knew about Little Women. I didn't even know it was split into 2 parts. I thought, oh, this is all just Little Women. But definitely recommend this. I gave this a 5 out of 5 on Goodreads, because I'm a nosy person. So if you're nosy like me, then you definitely want to give Little Women and Good Wives a try. The next book I'm going to talk about is one which I don't really know how to talk about it without spoiling it, because I feel that passionately about the book, and it is Khaled, Hosseini, hopefully pronounced that correctly, and 1,000 Splendid Suns. And I read this after finishing The Kite Runner. I got recommended this by so many people. They said, you have to read this book. It's like The Kite Runner, but it's from a female's perspective. It's amazing. It'll move you just as much as his other works do. And I finished this, I think, in a day or 2 again. Like, I did The Kite Runner in a day. I just couldn't put it down. I didn't finish reading it until 1 in the morning, and then I was crying and crying. And this book also had me crying and crying and bawling downstairs on the sofa on my own. But I can't really talk about this book without spoiling it, because I will go on and on and on about Hosseini's writing. And I think I'm actually going to make a separate video about The Kite Runner and this book, and kind of how important it is to read about struggles, strife, terrorism, fights, kind of real life instances, but with fictional characters. So it's almost like historical fiction to me. I think I would class this partially as historical fiction, because it does contain events that have actually happened, and he's clearly done his research. He clearly knows what the hell he's talking about. But the way he integrates these characters into this real world, the real life events, it's so clever, it's so respectful of all these mature themes that he explores. There's no beating around the bush, there's no romanticizing abuse. It's straight to the point, and it will get to you. There's points that will get to you that will make you cross. And it's not bad writing at all. It's far from bad writing. It is pure gritty writing. And if you've read this, you'll know what I'm talking about, hopefully, if you enjoyed it. But this is one of the most important books that I've ever read in my life thus far, and I would highly, highly recommend it. And The Kite Runner. Just please read it. Doesn't matter what like genres you're into. Just please read this book, please. At the end of July, I saw on Bookstagram stories that there was an amazing deal on. Sounds like I'm doing an advert now, but there was an amazing deal on from £25 down to £5 for a slipcase with all 3 of Philip Pullman's His Dark Materials novels in. So you've got Northern Lights, The Subtle Knife, and The Amber Spyglass. Obviously, there's none in here right now. I've got 2 of them here with me, but I am actually reading The Amber Spyglass at the moment, so that is around the corner at Alex's. Haven't finished it, so I'm not going to be talking about it until next month. But I wanted to talk about Northern Lights and The Subtle Knife in as much detail as I can, without any spoilers, because I feel like I missed out reading these. I'd heard about them when I was younger, and after reading them, I don't think they're inherently children's literature. I might have to study Northern Lights for my children's literature module in 2nd year. Haven't got my reading list yet. We'll let you know on Bookstagram if I see Northern Lights. I'm going to be very happy about reading that again. Don't normally reread books, but if it's for my course, I will have no problem whatsoever rereading this, because I really, really enjoyed them. It's fantasy mixed with science, like alchemy, dark magic, but it's also quite unique in the sense that Pullman's idea of worlds isn't kind of like, it's kind of like a Doctor Who sort of parallel world concept. Like, this is going to sound really weird of an analogy, but the episodes with the Cybermen, Rose Tyler, Christopher Eccleston, the kind of parallel world concepts that they had in those episodes are really kind of prominent in these books, in my opinion. But the way in which Pullman tackles it is so imaginative, especially in The Subtle Knife, when you kind of start moving between worlds a lot easier because of the knife. Slight spoiler, but there we go. But Northern Lights really, really sets the scene. It can be classed as a standalone book, I think, which is why I might have to study it without having to read the next 2, because although it does end in sort of a way that you have to read the second book, because the events are far from over, there's definitely elements of this that are standalone. And I really, really enjoyed reading this book. I know the Golden Compass film is absolute trash, but I've heard the BBC series, which is actually advertised, you probably can't see that, but it's actually advertised on these copies. I've heard from so many people that it's brilliant, and I'm not going to watch it until I finish The Amber Spyglass, because apparently it incorporates elements from the 2nd and 3rd book. But there's a reason I've read the 2nd book and The Amber Spyglass, and that is because I loved the characters, I loved the worlds, I loved the concepts that were introduced, the kind of play on religion, the respect for religion, but also incorporating it into kind of a science fiction fantasy world. It's so clever, and something that I think, had I read these when I was younger, I wouldn't have appreciated it, and I probably would have actually put the book down and not finished it, because it's quite difficult to grasp all the concepts that he talks about. But like, I'm 19 now, I'm reading these books for the first time. I can see why they're children's literature, but at the same time, I don't think they are. Like, there's just so much in these books that you have to take in. I think my little brain back then would have just gone, no thank you, move on to something else, like rubbish I was reading back then. I am really, really happy with the bargain I got here, and I'm really, really happy that I'm enjoying the books. So The Amber Spyglass is something that I'm about 200 out of maybe 550 pages into at the moment, but there will be a review up on my Goodreads, which I will link below, so you can go and see what I thought about these 2 books. Any of the books that I've mentioned thus far, the reviews will be up there in a bit more detail, so I don't have to spoil them too much for people who haven't read them and maybe want to. But would highly recommend these. Doesn't matter what age you are. Don't have to be a child to read these. Like, brilliant, absolutely brilliant in my eyes. Moving on to the final 2 books of August. I'm quite surprised with how many books I managed to read in August, mainly because I haven't had anything else to do, but I'm just so happy that I've gotten back into reading as massively as I have, and I'm so glad that the book community on social media is as welcoming and as great as it is. And the final 2 books I'm going to talk about are both English classics. One is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte, the other is Persuasion by Jane Austen, and this is the Penguin English Library edition. This is the Wordsworth Classics edition. By the way, these are like £2.50 on Amazon, but I'm not allowed to buy these for my uni course because apparently there's errors in. But if you just want to read them for like your own enjoyment, the footnotes are really useful. If you get confused on a word, they're fine. They just apparently have errors in. Not that I can see, but I've got to listen to my lecturers on that one and buy the expensive editions. But the first one of these that I read was Jane Austen's Persuasion. Now this is going to take me a little while to explain in the way that I kind of feel is right, because in GCSEs I had to read Pride and Prejudice, and it's not until I look back now that I think it's actually not that bad. But at the time, I was forced to read it. It was my first time properly indulging in a classic for like 2 to 3 years of study, and I absolutely despised it. I didn't want to read it. I forced myself to read it. I read the Spark Notes. I skimmed it. My copy was all battered and highlighted by the end of the course. I had no respect for the book. I just didn't give a damn about it. And then I thought, then I got back into kind of reading classics. I found classics that I liked. I found the style that I enjoyed, which was mostly Gothic classics like Dracula, Jane Eyre. I loved Jane Eyre. I read it in July. Beautiful book, beautiful protagonist. It's a shame I didn't start my YouTube then because I would have waffled about that. But definitely read Jane Eyre, definitely read Dracula. Wuthering, which I'll talk about in like a little bit after this. I loved Wuthering Heights. It's a really difficult book to talk about. But Persuasion, I bought this off my own back because I wanted to give Austen a second chance. I was meant to give Austen a second chance in my first year of uni with Emma, which I am actually planning to still read, but you know, mental health didn't let me read that, so I'm going to give it a chance as soon as I can. But I bought Persuasion. I thought it's not really a Jane Austen novel that you hear too much about. I believe it was her last published, I think it was published after she died. But I think I gave this like a 3 on Goodreads because I was so confused. Her style of writing is just absolutely not for me. Just the eloquence, the details, the fact that I don't know who's talking most of the time, the fact that I don't know what's going on, what the main plot of the story is, apart from like the little blurb you get on the back. It's like with Mrs. Dalloway, I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it, and I definitely wouldn't read it again. It's quite a short one, it's 250 pages, but it was such a drag. Although, what I will say is that the second half was much better. The first half, I couldn't wait to get it over and done with, to be honest with you. But I'm not the kind of person now who would like DNF a book. I'll get through it, I'll give it a chance to improve, and this did. Otherwise I think it would have been like a 2 out of 5 for me. Even now I don't particularly remember the plot, I just remember that things were alright in the end, as with most of Jane Austen's, if not all of Jane Austen's novels. I got tired of this book very quickly. I didn't know who was who. I didn't know like who Mr. Elliot was a lot of the time, because apparently it was her cousin, but I also thought, isn't it her father? Like, isn't it her brother? I didn't have a bloody clue. And it's safe to say that Austen is not for me. But comparing this style to Pride and Prejudice's style, because I think I had a lot more like drive and like teacher assisted reading, like kind of explaining the plot, explaining the characters, I understood Pride and Prejudice a lot more than I understood Persuasion, and it's not a great book in my eyes. I know that sounds potentially disrespectful. I respect Austen as an author, but she's got such a great legacy, and I definitely do see why for her time she was such an outbreak. She's so great in a lot of people's eyes. Loads of people nowadays still love and respect and admire Jane Austen, and I definitely agree, like, she should be respected. She is a good author, but it's just not my cup of tea. And if you want to give Persuasion a go, I do say like try it, but maybe don't expect to be wowed by it. Don't expect Pride and Prejudice. Persuasion is Persuasion, and it's not that great in my opinion. I'm sorry if you love Austen, but it's just not that great. The final book of August, however, is very good. In my eyes, Wuthering Heights is really well written and really explores a lot of darker themes, not just gothic, but a lot of darker, more adult themes of not just the time it was written, but nowadays. And I was giving a lot of updates on Bookstagram, and at the start, some slight spoilers may be here, so if you don't want to have like a little bit of spoilers, maybe skip forward. But Wuthering Heights, Heathcliff in particular, I was saying on my story, I want to protect him, he's so pure. When he was younger, like, I felt so bad because of all the abuse he received, physically and mentally. The fact that he was alienated, maybe just because of his race, maybe because of his looks, maybe because he was just found, maybe because of how family was treated then. He's a foundling, doesn't have any family. People don't respect that because your family and your name was probably quite an important factor back then. But Heathcliff at the start, sort of when he gets introduced, I wanted to protect him. I wanted to just like yank him out of the situation he was in. And then all of a sudden, you absolutely despise him, or at least I did anyway. I despised Heathcliff. He was the abusive one. And I think what Bronte was trying to say here is that don't treat people like shit, because then they will grow up and try and treat you and your family like shit to a whole new degree, because this is very much a family-based book. It's the children, they grow up, they have their own family, and their children have to face the consequences of what their parents have done, which I again think is very important. It's kind of a moral lesson. Treat people with respect, and I think that's one of the main messages out of Wuthering Heights. And I just found that even though I didn't, like I said on my Goodreads and my Instagram, I did not particularly like a single character in this book, to the sense that I would support them and back them up at the very end. I found Kathy, like Catherine's daughter Kathy, very, very annoying. I found Heathcliff to be abusive, and I found Mrs. Dean, although she was the character that I would say that I did like and invest with the most because she's the main narrator, I found her a bit annoying as well sometimes. Like, just kind of let people get on with their lives. Don't be a snitch. I know that's your job, but just don't be a bit of a snitch sometimes. But Wuthering Heights is such an important read for me. I would definitely be willing to read it again, although it's quite a short book, like 250 pages. Font's tiny, so like it took me a while, like 2, 3, 4 days to get through, but I thoroughly enjoyed it and I would definitely recommend it. Just be wary that there is like physical, mental abuse. There's a lot of kind of abuse against children in the book, but if you're willing to kind of see that that's what Bronte was going for, then by all means give this one a go, because this is like a gothic classic, I would say, that I really, really enjoyed. And the Bronte sisters now are some of my favourite female authors, and I want to give Anne a go as well. So if there's any Anne Bronte works, like I haven't really got very familiar with her, please leave a comment below or message me on Instagram kind of giving me recommendations, because I would love to read some of Anne's works. But yeah, if you want to give that a go, then Wuthering Heights, very, very good in my opinion. I have absolutely no idea how long this video is going to be, but I sincerely apologise if it's any longer than like 15 minutes and I have waffled, and this is not going to be a great first video. I've already acknowledged that. So many times I've stopped and started, so many times I've gone off on tangents, but if you are still here, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and thank you if anyone's come from Instagram to support the new channel. That is very much appreciated too, and just let me know if you've got any ideas for what you want to see, like book related, uni, academia, mental health. I don't really know what content I want to make at the moment. I know what I want to do, like bookish and academic, but I don't know more specifically what I want to talk about. So if you've got any ideas, do let me know. Don't forget to like the video. It would be really useful to know if you enjoyed it. Even though I waffled, I apologise. I really do apologise. And don't forget to subscribe down below and just support the new channel. And go follow me on Instagram, go follow me on Goodreads, and that, thankfully for you, is pretty much everything. So once again, thank you for watching, and I will hopefully see you in a little while with a much shorter video. But thank you and goodbye.